Hi, psychology class. This is Dr. Benhar. Another topic that is sometimes difficult for students to grasp immediately, it usually takes a little bit more time, is the concept of the experiment. When we're trying to determine cause and effect, we must conduct an experiment. Correlational research or descriptive research cannot explain cause and effect. So if we want to figure out whether or not, let's say, violent television causes people to become more violent, we must conduct an experiment. The first element in an experiment is known as an operational definition. We basically have to define the thing that we are measuring. So if we are going to be measuring aggression in individuals, we have to come up with an operational definition so that if observers are observing children or anyone else, we would all be on the same page with our definition so that we could recognize aggressive behavior. For example, aggression probably consists of hitting people, kicking people, spitting on people possibly, banging a head against the wall, throwing things. All of these could be an example of aggressive behavior, but we have to define our terms. Let me give you an example of an operational definition. So for example, if we ask the question, which of the following might be used as an operational definition of retraction, we have choice number one, a feeling of affection when two people are together, or choice number two, the number of minutes during which two people are touching each other over a 4-hour period. Notice the second one is something that you could observe that is certainly defined well, and therefore it's something that we can measure. The first one is a feeling of affection. Well, how do you define a feeling of affection? If we don't come up with an operational definition, we can't measure the variable. So number two is the better choice. Another important concept is the independent variable. You can think of this as a cause in the cause-effect aspect of an experiment. So an independent variable is a variable that's manipulated by the experimenter. If you look over here right now at the cursor, you can see it says independent variables, the violent TV. In actuality, when we look at the independent variable here, it's the question of what kind of television are they watching. So we would have an experimental condition in which they watch, let's say, 3 hours of violent TV per day for a week. And then we would have a comparison group or the control group that would watch non-violent TV for 3 hours a day for a week. The idea of a comparison group is that it may just be that television causes people to become violent. So we always have to have a comparison group, which is known as the control condition. So in this case, the type of television is what's being manipulated by the experimenter. We're trying to see if violent television causes a person to become violent. So the dependent variable is the variable that's measured by the experimenter. In this case, if we're looking at does violent television cause people to become aggressive, what's being affected here is actually the aggressive behavior. We want to see, does the cause of the violent television create an effect of aggression on children or anyone else watching violent TV? So whatever is being measured by the experimenter, think of it as the effect. EFFECT. In order to have a true experiment, we need something known as random assignment. Random assignment means that each of the individuals of the participants have an equal opportunity to be part of the experimental condition or the control condition or comparison group. The reason why we do this is to minimize any pre-existing differences between two groups. So if we have, let's say, 200 students, what we would want to do is randomly assign these 200 students through a computer program. A computer program would basically spit out names and say this individual goes to the experimental condition and this individual goes to the comparison group. The logic behind is that if there were any existing differences between groups, by grouping the two groups together and then assigning them to the experimental control condition, we minimize any differences. Here's an example. The computer would randomly assign one participant to the experimental group and randomly assign another individual to the control group. So if, let's say, we had two groups of 100 individuals and we grouped them all together, then randomly assigning them to the experimental group or control group, what we could do is minimize any kind of differences that occur prior to beginning the study. Here's a good way to just sum this up. Here we have, let's say, 200 individuals. We randomly assign them through a computer program telling an individual to go to the experimental group or the control group. What's being manipulated by the experimenter is known as the independent variable. In this case, it would be the amount of hours that they watch television, whether it's violent or non-violent television per day. Then what we're measuring is basically the dependent variable. It's the effect. So think of the independent variable as the cause and the dependent variable as the effect. One way you can remember the order of this is thinking of ID, independent variable, dependent variable, ID. And when you think of the mnemonic technique of ID, always obviously I becomes before D, so the cause comes before the effect. It's also observed by blind observers. The best type of study is something known as the double-blind study. In the double-blind, the participants and the experimenters are not aware of which person is assigned to the experimental condition or the control condition. By the fact that the observers are not aware, along with that includes the experimenter and also includes the participants, it means that there will not be any kind of, let's say, experimenter bias where the experimenter unconsciously or consciously affects the participants' behavior by knowing whether or not they are in the experimental condition or the control condition. I hope this helps and have a wonderful day.